I do this workshop quite a bit. I tend to do it a lot for undergraduate students, and I'm glad that we're recognizing as a university that graduate students have just as many issues, as well as those of us who aren't even in school. Time is a commodity that there's only so much of. And what we do know is there are only 168 hours in a week, and so we cannot add more time, but the decisions that we make can definitely take away time, right? I don't have a magic one that can create more hours for you, but hopefully what we'll do is we'll talk about some things so that you're best utilizing the ones that you have. What I've discovered in my 6 years here at the university is that successful students know these three things: what they need to get done, when they have time to do it, and how long it will take. So the first of what needs to get done is typically your person that I'm going to see that's disorganized. At the very beginning of the semester, hopefully you took all of your syllabi out and you had some sort of planner and you wrote down when all of your major assignments and projects and papers and presentations and all of that stuff was due. That way you're not constantly shocked every time you turn the page of a calendar about, oh my goodness, I didn't realize there was an exam this week, or oh my goodness, I didn't realize that this 5-page paper was due. Or so the very first thing is just writing it down somewhere and getting an idea of what does the entire semester look like. So we have to be very forward thinking. And then knowing what types of things are going on in our lives around that. So how many of you actually have fall break? Some departments do and some don't. So knowing that, and then maybe, if there are things that are going to be immediately due after break, or knowing that Thanksgiving is coming up and it's right before the end of the semester, so how am I going to balance that? So knowing what would be due the week of and the week after would be really important for kind of planning around those things. And that can be done electronically and it can be done on paper. My caution is I love electronics. They're absolutely fantastic, but they also have the ability to fail. So it's never a bad idea to have it written down also, in case something happens to a computer or a phone. Then the next piece is, when do we have time to do it? And a lot of that is where I have students write down, truly, what do you do in a day? What time do those things happen? If I were using myself as an example, I'm at work from 8:30 to 5. So if I wanted to go back to school, I obviously can't take classes between the time of 8:30 to 5. But you're in very flexible schedules where maybe you're in lab for so many hours, and then maybe you have an hour or two. Maybe you're in classes and you have a few hours. Some of you don't have classes at all on some days, where you have classes all day long on others. So really knowing when do you have time to do it. And where most people make the biggest mistake is how long things will actually take. We are very good at human beings at overestimating our abilities. And not giving it. That's the reason why we sit down to do something at 10 o'clock and we had budgeted 2 hours of time for it. And here it was a lot longer than we anticipated, or the reading was a lot more technical, or it had a whole bunch of different language or different concepts that we've never seen before, and before we know it, we had given ourselves 2 hours and we're up until 2 o'clock in the morning because it was harder than we had anticipated. So what I'm hoping we'll think about over the next half hour is really thinking about when we're planning things, are we paying attention to all three of these things? What do we need to get done? When do I have time to do it? And then lastly, how long does it actually take to do? So these are things that we do. We talked about using a planner. Prioritizing. Sometimes your priority has to do with when things are due. If something's due tomorrow and you haven't done it, then today is the date that you need to do it. Sometimes your priority will be based on someone else's time. And an example of that would be when a professor has office hours, or if you're asking someone to fill out information for you, or if you have to run some sort of test, when you have availability to get into the lab. So sometimes our priorities we don't have control over, but those are really good things to think of in terms of planning what we do. This is learning to say no. There are lots of things that we want to do with our time, but our commitment right now is to whatever it is that we told the university we would be in order to get accepted to be a student. We say for X amount of weeks, we'll do this amount of work with this result. And so all of those other things you have to start to think, if you say yes to it, are you saying no to something else? So I just want everyone to think about it. You know what? I'm going to give you a sheet, but I don't want you to look at it. I just want you to flip it over, because I want you to do this right now. Just make a list of everything you need to get done. And let's just say till the end of this week. I know that says, till next week, but just in the next couple of days. And we'll just take a few minutes to do this and think about it and process it in a minute. Everybody good? We're working on this list of When you're done with that, I want you to flip over the page, and I actually want you to do this exercise, which is, where does time go? So when we had started, I had originally told you there are 168 hours in the week, and that we cannot make any more hours, but we can definitely lose hours in the decisions that we make. And what I want you to do is just this exercise. It's very quick. Some things are 7 days a week, some are 5. But it'll give you an idea of, are you allowing yourself enough time to study? Are you even allowing yourself enough time to get done what it is that you need to? And I don't have the right or the wrong answer for that. It's just a self-assessment of, where are you spending your time? And hopefully you're spending it doing the majority of these things, which is sleeping, eating, going to class, working. There's a question about personal grooming activities in there, and it might seem silly, but it is the one thing we tend to give up. We give up sleep, we give up good nutrition, and we give up showering, which are all things that keep us healthy, because everybody knows that winter season is coming upon us, which means colds and flus. And nothing will set you back worse than catching a cold, right? But then I'd ask you about your commute and daily meals and how long that takes if you're the one that's in charge of cooking and cleaning up. When you think about commute, think about if you're involved in any type of organizations, anything outside of the university or inside the university. I like to use an example, like, I was going to be here for an hour today between 4 and 5, but not really, because, it's not like I could teleport myself and be here right at 4 o'clock. There's always travel time to and from things. And there's always the meeting that runs over, or someone wants to stay and talk afterward. So really think about how long those things take. So between the two activities, and I'm still going to talk and continue to work on it, so for those that aren't on the camera, the activity in the paper that the students are working on is having them calculate how many hours a week they do the following things: sleep, grooming activities such as showering, brushing teeth, getting ready, things of that nature, meals, hopefully eating 3 times a day, commuting to and from campus, work, etc., doing errands, working your job, being in class, and then time to have a social life. And then I asked students to write down, things that they wanted to get done for a week. And I just have a list of 8 that usually come up when I'm talking with students, which is, depending on where they are in their program, if they're undergraduate or graduate students, but typically we have to write a paper, we have some readings to do, there's always some sort of maybe lab, studying for an exam, writing up a report, organizations that students are involved in, and on top of like all those things that we're still required to do that we maintain our daily lives. Again, the eating and the sleeping, and then everybody still wants time for friends and family. The idea is to do this time sheet to see, after doing all of these things, are we allowing ourselves enough time to study? And I don't have the right answer for this. Only you know how many hours it takes you, or how many hours you would feel comfortable, how many hours you would like to have each week to dedicate to your academics. So for some people it might need to be 40 hours, a full-time work week, or it could be 30. But the idea then is to go back and pay attention to where you're spending your time, and if you don't have enough hours left that you'd like to dedicate to studying, then where maybe are you using hours somewhere else that can be shifted to that, without taking that away from sleeping, eating healthy, and taking care of ourselves. But that's the first thing that students usually give up, are those healthy habits. They stay up late, and we eat on the fly, and things of that nature, rather than maybe really pay attention to how long we're spending doing things such as, we go to check mail, and before we know it, we're checking fantasy sports, or I have a bad habit of reading things like Mental Floss. And you read one article, and before you know it, you're 4 articles in, because it's just kind of fun. So can some people just call out their top 5 distractions, things that distract them from getting done what they need to? Facebook? Email? What's that? Phone calls?
TV.
What's that?
TV.
Television?
People in the hallway.
People in the hallway?
They always want to talk.
People want to stop and talk to you, sure. What else? Does this look familiar? So, family, friends want our time, and we want their time. Socializing, Facebook, the internet, texting, telephone, email, any of that type of communication, television and gaming, and sleep. Sometimes students, when they're just absolutely overwhelmed, it's easier to go to bed than to deal with something. So that can even be a distraction sometimes. The problem is, these aren't all bad things. They're distractions, but they're also things that keep us healthy. It's good to have friends and family. It's good to socialize. Email is important. It's a great way, and texting is a good way to communicate with people. Television and gaming can be a good source of de-stressing and taking some time away. Your brain is an organ just like your lungs and your heart. It needs periods of rest. The problem is when this becomes what we do instead of what we need to be doing, and it becomes a source of stress, or a source of distraction, or a source of procrastination. I want to take it one step further, kind of go cognitive with it. Why do you think that you're distracted? So those things are very distracting, but what is it about you that when it's going, you know you have things to do, but you allow that to distract you? So, in the back of your mind, you're supposed to be reading something, but
If I'm worried about something, if I'm worried about doing it in some way, I don't want to do it. So turn off. I've done like that since I was a student.
very good. So what this student said was, when she's worried about something, she'll put it off rather than do it. So now we create a different behavior. But whatever it was that you were worried about is still due, isn't it? So that behavior doesn't change the fact that that's due. What else?
It's easier or more entertaining.
Sure. It's easier, it can be more entertaining. I'm going to challenge